Hello, and welcome to today's episode of the Authentic Uprising podcast. I'm your host, Jill Simons, and I'm so excited to grow in the radical art of standing in what God says about you with you today. The show is a place where we pour into the sense of who God is, who we are, and how we can live more in the freedom that He has for us every single day. Hello and welcome to the Authentic Uprising podcast. As always, I'm your host, Jill Simons, and I'm so excited to be here with you today. And we're going to be talking about really giving ourselves grace to go through processes, to be in progress. And that's something that I am notoriously bad at. I really dislike the fact that you don't just get warp from point A to point B. And so this is a topic that I love having other people come in and speak into me on, as well as sharing it with you. So I'm very excited to have my guest today. Her name is Beth McGrane Tran, and she is a coach and helps walk with people through different scenarios in their lives where they're looking to really approach their life with a better mindset. So I'm so excited to have Beth here with me today. Beth, thanks for joining me.
Thank you, Jill. I am so excited to be here. First time I've had a chance to meet you face to face, even though I've seen you around for so long. So thank you so much for having me.
My pleasure. Why don't you share with us about the kind of very specific situations that you coach in and how you got started doing that?
Oh, it's such a great story. I really love to coach women, and usually they are Catholic working moms. And I got started in this because I was seeing in my own life that I was becoming disconnected. I just have these patterns, that we all have, of procrastination and perfectionism and all of these different things that come up. But I also saw that in my family, I was kind of disconnecting from them. And that was actually the big driver to drive me into this world of coaching. I started to receive coaching and leadership training and had a taste of coaching, and I just loved it. And I thought, oh, this is fantastic. I can help people so much through this. And it has changed things in my family, because I have learned now that if I want a more connected family, that's up to me. It's up to me to create those opportunities. And the whole thing that you hear a lot in coaching is to be detached from the results. And I have discovered that that is so important when it comes to wanting to make change in your families. I have to just keep doing it out of pure love, unattached from how it's going to turn out. And that's what Jesus taught us, right? That's unconditional love. There's no condition on it. So that's kind of how I got started. And I especially love to work with women who, they line up so much with my own story, who struggle with procrastination, because I think it's something that a lot of us deal with. And I've discovered that these coaching tools that I have been able to learn can help so much with that. And it's so important that we know that we have the grace available. So we're going to be talking about that today, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. So, because I think that, and framing it with that, having to do the same things in your family over and over again, and being detached from what physically happens is where so many people get derailed, right? That's where people fall off the diet. That's where people fall off the exercise plan, because you can't see my muscles after a week of doing this. And, we live in such an immediate gratification
Mm-hmm.
world and culture. And I think that is so exacerbated, obviously, by having all of the information in the world literally at our fingertips all of the time. And, I was even just thinking the other day about like in the 1980s when you needed to like hire a contractor, like how did you know if they were good or not? And I was just like, I can't even
Word
like
of mouth.
yeah, exactly. You just kind of hoped you had good friends with good taste or something because I mean, it was like the yellow pages was what you had, and that was kind of it. And so this inundation with everything you could want, it seems like at your fingertips is kind of begs the question, like, if you can, should you, if you can access everything, should you? Because it really lessens our appetite for these longer processes. And so whatever that process is that somebody's going through, whether you're trying to make a change in your family or make a physical change in your body or make a spiritual change in your life, there's a usually longer than we want road from point A to point B. And so how do you help people walk through sustaining that specifically when they're maybe not seeing the results that they want?
Yeah. Oh, that is so true that we want it to be done now, right? And and the patience and the other virtues that we get to practice along the way can be really difficult. But I always try to remind myself, okay, there is something here in this struggle that is for me. And so whatever the struggle is, I have to know first that God's grace is in this moment. God's grace is in the struggle. I just need to have, I don't know, like the glasses on, the glasses on to be looking through that lens so that I can find it. I need to be looking for God's grace in all of it. And so that's a big piece of it, is to know that there's something here for me. And so it kind of helps with having that patience with yourself, maybe with your loved ones who you wish that they were further along on their journey or whatever they are going through. But so that's a big piece of it. And then also, I do a lot of work with mindset tools. And so it really comes back to how we are thinking about the circumstances that we're in. And I've discovered, or realized really, it was just there to be discovered. But if everything comes back to our thoughts, then wouldn't it be best to make sure that we are putting the best thoughts in that place and then getting the best, that's how we can get the best results. So where did the best thoughts come from? Truth. Who's the truth? Jesus is the truth, right? So I love to help women go back to, what are you thinking about who you are? What are you currently thinking? And then let's hold that up to truth. Let's look at, what are you currently thinking about God also? And then what does God say about you? Because that's what the truth is. And if we can put those thoughts in, then we will come out with a better result. And of course, those thoughts that are full of truth help us have patience and help us see the grace along the way.
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny, as you were talking, I think about, the kind of stereotypical, like praying for patience, and then you have opportunities to,
yes.
and you're like, why is this how this happens? Like, this is very frustrating reality, because
thank you, Lord.
I needed this because I don't have the patience. Be
careful what you pray for.
Exactly. Because And like you said, that thought stewardship, I think, is something that is a new frontier for a lot of people, where there's that idea, so many of us have lived by default, especially in our thought lives, for a long time. And there might have been like a stewardship of our external actions, maybe based on, religious practices, or being interested in, abstaining from sin, or consciously embracing the good. But I think that earlier stage of the process a lot of times doesn't get stewarded well. And so then the output comes from a place of a lot of striving, like you're talking about, trying to just do it out of not having the internal thought motivation to kind of like support that. And so, this is something that's very integral to coaching kind of across the board, is how do we become aware of our thoughts. So let's maybe start there. If people are not sure if, or maybe don't even really have a sense of what is going on in their own thought life.
I love what you're saying about how it causes a lot of striving. And I always think about what St. Paul said in Romans 7, I believe it is, is that, why is it that I do the things that I don't want to do? And I always identified so much with St. Paul when he was saying that, because that is what I saw happening in my own life. And it's so frustrating. You see yourself spinning, and as much as I try, it never seems to be enough. And maybe I might try something new, and maybe I'll stick with it for a week, and then I don't keep going. And so I've gotten to the point where I'm like, okay, that's great if I identify with St. Paul, but there must be something to do about it, right? And that's why I'm so excited to find the work in coaching that we really can do something about it if we go back to our thoughts. Because we can't change the doing until we change the thoughts behind it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and it's funny because you mentioned St. Paul, and that's actually, so Romans 7, he has, he does what he doesn't want to do. And then he gives us the answer in Romans 12, when he says, we are transformed essentially by the renewing of our mind in Christ Jesus. And it's funny because I think that that's something that gets read, like a lot of the Bible gets read, where you're like, okay, yes. But very little actual connection with like, okay, what would that actually look like if you did what he was saying?
Exactly.
Happens.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. And this is what it looks like, is to take those thoughts captive.
Yep.
So I think you were just asking about how do we do that?
Yes. Yeah. So really, as you begin to kind of expose people to this work, especially new clients that have maybe never gone through anything like coaching before, what is kind of the beginning stages of building that awareness of what is even going on in your thought life?
Yeah, I think first it starts with helping them realize that it is the thoughts behind the actions that are driving their results. It's the thoughts are driving the actions. And then to give them hope, because most of us don't realize that you actually can choose your thoughts. And not only can you choose them, now I have heard, I'm sorry, I have to digress here for a quick second. When I very, very first heard of coaching, I heard people speaking against it because of the idea that you can choose your thoughts. And their premise was, you can't choose your thoughts. They just come in all the time. You have all of these thoughts all day long, and you certainly don't choose many of them. That's true. Our brain offers us thoughts all day long. But the key is, which ones am I going to actually capture? Which ones am I going to focus on? And if there's one that is causing, keep coming up and is causing me to act in a way that I don't want to act, then let's take that captive and examine it and hold it up to truth. And so that is, that's one way to talk about how mindset coaching can help. And yes, it goes back to helping people see that it's possible and giving them hope.
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't like these actions that you're seeing in your life? Well, it's possible to get to, I talk a lot about getting to the root of it. What is at the root of that action? Let's uproot it if we don't want it anymore, because you can choose something different.
Yeah.
Our free will is an amazing gift that God has given us.
Yes, absolutely. I love that. Like, when we actually have a charm coming out this spring that is one that I wear almost all the time now. And it, on the front, it says protect your hope. And on the back, it says it can't be taken, only given away. And like how we really, that is something that like is ours to claim, you know, from the palace to the concentration camp. You know, this is something that is available for us if we avail ourselves of it. And that is so much of what we see in the grace that God has for the process of things, where when, and you said much earlier about, you know, kind of identifying the fact just that there is something that is for my good in this, even when we have maybe a long unawareness of what that is. I have a special needs child, and we had an entire year just catastrophe educational experience. And during it, I was like, okay, there's something good for all of us in this. Nobody knows what it is. Like, we have absolutely no idea. And still, I don't know if I could point to like, oh, specific fruit, here's what it was. But that hope that there is something in that, and that is in some way formative, whether I realize it or not, is part of what allows us to desire to grow in virtue, I think, and desire to cooperate with grace.
And I love that, you know, through God's grace, he gives us these virtues of faith, hope, and love. And I was just, this is so timely. I was just talking to my fourth grade religious ed class last Sunday. I said, okay, here's a little quiz for you. Faith, hope, and love, these three virtues, two of them will not be present in heaven. Which two are they? And they got it. They figured it out. I was so proud of them. So if you've never heard that before, you know, the Corinthians verse, love is eternal. Only love remains. Because when you're in heaven, you're already there. You don't need hope anymore. And you don't need faith anymore, because faith is believing in what you have not seen. And you're already there seeing the beatific vision. And so you don't need faith anymore. But what a gift God has given us to give us the grace to have these virtues for the journey. Because like you're saying, that is something that cannot be taken away from us. It can only be given away. That's a great way to put it. I love that.
Yeah. Yeah. Because that free will gets underestimated so often, especially
powerful
when we're in these cycles like you're talking about, where it's like, gosh, I even want to do this and I am not doing it. Like, why is this the case? And so it can feel like we don't really have like the full powers of our free will.
Yeah. And that's really interesting when you talk about not having the full power, because that's one thing about grace, is that we actually need to be predisposed, be prepared to receive it. But how do we do that? Because there are things in our life that can make it difficult for us to receive that grace. And it's not something that God has done. He is freely giving it, right? But it's what we do. Our own sin makes it so that we are not prepared to receive that grace. And so if we want to have that grace available to us in every moment of every day, it is available. But in order to be able to receive it and be prepared, we need to be aware of our own sin and to be reconciled to God so that we're open to receiving that grace.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you had to give people like a parting shot, like this is something to focus on as they maybe are walking through a challenging process or undertaking going through a new process, what would you give them as kind of an admonishment to focus on?
I go back to your identity, who you really are, who God is, and how are you trusting him? And even especially in the moments of every day, because that grace is available to you in every moment. And you just got to have that lens on to look for it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Beth, for being with us today. If people want to connect with you online, we're going to put some links in our show notes and in the notes on YouTube. But why don't you share with us what you have available, especially about people dealing with fear?
Yes, I have an ebook that I created a little while ago that is a guide to overcoming fear. And it kind of takes you through step by step. And I think it might be really helpful because fear is one of those things that holds us back from doing God's will big time. And like I said, I coach people in procrastination, and fear is a huge thing that is at the root of procrastination very often. So I hope that that's helpful for your listeners. And yes, we'll make sure and have the link in the show notes. And you can also find me on Instagram and Facebook at Women Created and Called.
Fantastic. Well, thank you all for being here with us this week. And thank you, Beth.
Thank you, Jill.
Thank you so much for joining me on today's episode of the Authentic Uprising podcast. It is always a joy to be with you. I encourage you to subscribe to our podcast, subscribe to our YouTube channel, whichever place you most prefer, or do it all if that is what floats your boat. We would love to continue to get to know you better and grow in relationship with you. And so I encourage you to check out the links in both our show notes and our YouTube description that tell you more about where you can connect with us elsewhere. The two big things we have going on besides the podcast is our shop that is full of reminders of who you are in God, helping you to really grow in that radical art of standing in who you are and giving gifts that help others to do the same. The other big thing we have going on is the Uprising Academy. This is all of our formation programs, workshops, retreats. Everything is available virtually and on demand, where you can sign up and continue to learn more about radically standing in what God says about you, especially if you are in a place in your life where you are not being fed the way that you long to be fed. Whether it's in your community, whether it's at your church, whatever it is, there is more for you, and we can absolutely walk with you into it through the Uprising Academy. All those links are in our show notes, and if you enjoyed this episode, I encourage you to leave a review. Reviews are the number one way that we help get in front of new faces, new people that are able to be touched by the radical art of standing in what God says about us. I love you. I'm praying for you. I hope you have an amazing week.